Let's say you're done. Doesn't matter why. The news, the cost of living, politics, your job, all of it. Whatever it is for you, you just want out of the United States for a while. Where can you go for 6 to 12 months with no hassle at all? And later in the video, I'm going to show you a few options that you may not have thought of where you can stay indefinitely. If we haven't met, I'm Daniel. I was a former hospital CEO for 20 years, and I've been slow traveling the world for 5 years now, and I'm currently in Korea. So first on the list, two countries that are very easy to get to. So our neighbor to the north, Canada. Canada is a very beautiful country if you haven't seen it. A lot to see, and it's very easy to enter as a US citizen. Typically, when you go to the border, you can get 180 days, very easy. And some immigration officers have the option to make it even longer if you can show some stronger ties and enough money to support the stay. But that's all case by case. Not a guarantee, but the default is 180 days. Now, as you're probably thinking, this is not a cheap country. Absolutely true. So you're not going to save much money going into Canada. It may actually be more expensive. Cost-wise, it's going to cost $3,000 to $4,000 a month easily. And some places like Toronto and Vancouver, it's going to be even more expensive. So what about healthcare? Well, healthcare could be an issue. You definitely need travel insurance because you're not covered by the Canadian system. But it's very close to the US, so if you have US coverage or Medicare, you can come back down for the care you need. And English is the official language nationwide, except for Quebec, which is primarily in French. So it's a pretty easy country to enter. All right, now looking back down south, let's talk about Mexico. This is another very easy country to get to and to enter as a US citizen. So by default, a US citizen gets 6 months. They have been cracking down a little bit on repeated entries, but pretty much you'll get 6 months to start with. You may get another 6 months, but I have read and heard stories about people trying to re-enter after 6 months and getting much shorter stays. So Mexico has a lot to offer, a lot of diversity, a lot of different types of big cities to small cities to rural communities. Cost-wise, Mexico is getting a little more expensive, but there are places that are still pretty cheap. So you could definitely live for way less than you do in the United States. There's places that for $1,500 to $2,000 a month, you can still live a pretty comfortable life. So healthcare isn't really a big concern in Mexico because you have very good hospitals in some of the major cities. Routine checks are very cheap. And you're very close to the United States if you need to go back and get your care there. So there is somewhat of a language barrier in Mexico. In some of the more popular expat places, there's more English being spoken. But when you get into rural areas, life would be much easier if you spoke Spanish. But here are two options. So Mexico is a much cheaper option than Canada, but both are super close to the United States and very easy to enter. All right, if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps to grow the channel. Also, check out the description below. There's some resources I put in there, such as travel insurance, SIM cards, VPNs, some things you can use as you travel. And some are affiliate links, which means that it helps support the channel, but it doesn't cost you anything else. So I would greatly appreciate it if you checked out those links. And also stick around because there's some options at the end where you can stay indefinitely. All right, moving on. So these two are a little farther from the US, but they're still pretty close and still very popular. So the first on the list is Costa Rica. You can enter for 180 days. It's becoming more and more expensive now. It was super popular in the past, and now my understanding is costs are greatly increasing. It's probably $2,000 to $3,000 a month, or in some popular places, it could be even more than that. So healthcare is super strong in Costa Rica. Also in the expat areas, English is probably more spoken, but again, Spanish would probably be very helpful if you lived in Costa Rica and wanted to become part of the community. Next on the list is Panama, and you can enter in to the country very easily, and you can stay for 6 months. Interestingly, Panama's National Immigration Service grants U.S. and Canadian citizens 180 days as tourists. There's a resolution that guarantees the 6 months entry. It's not up to the immigration officer. So the 6 months is guaranteed by the resolution. So costs, depending on where you live in Panama, can be relatively low or a little bit higher. I stayed 5 months in Panama City, and I think for $2,000 a month, you could definitely live in Panama City, maybe a little bit more. But there's areas outside of Panama City where you can live cheaper. Healthcare is very good in the bigger cities. So Panama City has some really good hospitals. The farther you get outside, the cheaper it is, but the less high quality healthcare that you will have available to you. So you'll probably have to travel to the city. Now, concerning the language, in the expat areas, the more tourist areas, there'll be more English. But what I found, even in Panama City, knowing Spanish is definitely a positive. It would be somewhat isolating not to know Spanish because it would be very difficult to talk to the local people. All right, now traveling a little bit farther, the next on the list is the UK. So UK includes England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So the UK gives Americans 6 months when they enter. There's no formal visa application. It's also one of the priciest destinations. This is not a place that you would go to save money at all. But there's a lot of cool things to see in the UK, and you're very close to all the Schengen countries where you can visit for 90 days. Healthcare is good in the UK. It's definitely not cheap. So most Americans carry travel insurance when they travel. And obviously the language is English, although UK English, a little bit different, but very easy to communicate with others. All right, the last two on the list are very close to each other, and then I'm going to talk about the ones where you can stay indefinitely. So the next is Albania. You can actually spend a full year there as an American citizen. After the year is up, you have to leave for 90 days, but that would be a great chance to go visit some Schengen countries. Albania is very, very cheap. It's around $800 a month living expenses plus rent. So you could easily live for $1,500 a month or less. Healthcare is a little more modest compared to Western Europe, and most expats rely on private insurance. Language is kind of split by age. Younger Albanians are far more likely to speak English than the older ones. So language could be a barrier, but the trade-off between cost and the ability to stay for a full year, it might be worth checking out. The next one on the list is the country of Georgia. You can also stay a full year there. So new for 2026, you do need to have health and accident insurance, but you probably should anyway. Leave the country and come back in and you get another full year. Costs here are super cheap. It's around $600 a month plus rent. So you can easily live here much cheaper than you can in the United States. So healthcare is kind of mixed. Private care is affordable, but it definitely does not have the high level that you would find in Costa Rica or Mexico or Panama. But there are healthcare options. So language is kind of the same as Albania. Younger people are more likely to know some English. So 7 different countries, 7 possibilities, but as promised, here's some places you can stay long-term very easily. So as you probably already know, you can move in between mainland US and US territories, Puerto Rico, the US Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and the Northern Mariana Islands very easily. If you want to go further, there's 3 Pacific nations, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands will let you stay indefinitely as well. Now, I lived in Guam for 3 years, a long time ago, and my understanding now is all these places are very, very expensive to live. So there's options, but these are probably pretty expensive options, and most of them on the list are very, very small. And I can tell you, living in Guam, 26 miles long, 12 miles wide, it gets very small, very fast. But these are options for you. So let me know what you think of the list. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.